Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're joining us from all over the world. Welcome to Web3 Warriors, episode 108, featuring Hakim Draper, CEO of Artist Intelligence Labs, a managing partner with Link Media Partners, a chief strategy officer for Data to Leads, and an advisor to Thuluverse, a new Web3 game coming out. Welcome, Hakim. How are you doing today? Thanks for joining us.
I am well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good for, Saturday afternoon. You're joining us from sunny California. I see some nice hills there, Southern Cali, shout out. I have yet to make my way down there. I'm up here in the prairies of Canada. We don't have as many nice, beautiful hills like what you got over there. How's the weather treating you?
Very well. I was trying to remember where I was the last time that we did this. Last time I was on, I must have been in Los Angeles.
I think you were in LA, but I can't recall.
My wife and I have been totally like living a sort of nomadic, decentralized life for the last like 3.5 years now. So
nice.
It's coming to an end. It's been a very sort of fun experiment to really understand what it means to live without attachment to a bunch of like really anchoring material things. It's been
Not quite off
really
the grid though, right? Just kind of
no, yeah,
nomadic.
still, yeah, just still interacting, still in society. I think there's a balance. I think as a society, we tend to look at these concepts and go to the very, very extreme. And I think in practicality, its application in the real world looks more like something like what we've done for the last 3.5 years or so.
Nice.
And so I think it's been an interesting experiment.
That's cool,
It'll be
man.
nice to have a home base again when we settle back in and have sort of a regular place that's ours. I
Nice.
do miss like having a home of my own to go,
Right, I could imagine, but
fix
I'm sure it's
something or,
exciting in its own
yeah,
ways as well. And then you joined us
yeah.
with Micah that last time as well, and we had a great chat on LinkedIn
Oh
there.
yeah,
So that was pretty cool. So
yeah.
you've been on the show a couple times, and very much appreciate having your knowledge and your depth of knowledge from the music industry, but also in Web3 and blockchain. And you've really been around the block for a minute, so it's awesome. So yeah, welcome everyone
Well,
to the Web3 Warriors podcast. I'm David Chroma, your host. I go by Chrome in the metaverse, and today we're really going to be looking at one of the favorite topics that we have, which is really just blockchain innovation empowering creators, and how Web3 and crypto and the blockchain are really making it easier for creators to create their own kind of foundations for their career, and also open new streams of revenue, new streams of community building through the blockchain and through this kind of global network that is opened up through Web3 and through cryptocurrencies. So today specifically, we're going to be looking at kind of music on one hand, where Hakim has worked with the Artist Intelligence Labs to create a platform called Song Secure, where they're actually using the blockchain to basically replace the antiquated copyright system and allow for musicians to actually mint their intellectual property on the blockchain and have that stand as the copyright, right? And so very interesting, innovative disruption of a bureaucratic system that is going to be much more, I think, easy and more usable for your average artist out there, right? And then on the other hand, he's working with a project called Thuluverse in the gaming space, which is kind of a mobile game that is embracing, Web3 components. So really interested in kind of picking your brain about that. And in both cases, it's really about giving more power to the community, giving more power to the artist and the creator. And that's really what we're here for on Web3 Warriors. So thank you everyone for joining. If you do have any questions in the live chat, for those who join on the live chat, you do have an opportunity to ask any questions if anything we're discussing piques your interest or you have any feedback for us. So thank you for that. And with that, maybe I'm going to jump into an interview with Hakim and really just trying to get an update on what you've been up to, because as we mentioned, you've been on the show a couple times before. You're traveling nomadic life and busy in the music space, in the gaming space, in the data space, which is another really interesting corner of blockchain and really just the digital world that we're growing in. So what have you been up to, Hakim? Thanks for joining us. What's new?
oh man, yeah. I mean, I think like you said, first and foremost is Song Secure, and really, that's just very simply. I want to take a step back. So if you look at today's music ecosystem, the challenges, and I'm going to use some air quotes here, the challenges that all these companies purport to have is sort of incomplete data chain and not being able to match music with creators and rights holders. That's a problem that we could have solved 10 years ago with this technology. And I pushed for it for a long time, first from within Warner Music when I worked there. And then after I left, we did some really interesting projects so I could better understand both blockchain as a technology, tokenization of a fan ecosystem without cannibalizing the existing revenue. And that's the project we did with Old Dirty Bastard Estate and Wu Tang, and that was amazing.
Yeah, I recall you telling us about that on the first time we had an
Yeah,
interview. Yeah.
yeah, we rolled it up with the 50th what would have been the 50th birthday of Old Dirty Bastard, and Wu Tang performed. Busta Rhymes came out, and Queen Latifah stopped by, and it was a bunch of people. Just everybody came out, and all the people that were there, some 2,500 people, were all token holders that had participated in this sort of test that we did to better understand, like, is there a path to tokenization without cannibalizing existing revenue, and what are sort of the ramifications, what are the upsides and downsides with that? And that's a whole nother ball of wax. But in that process, what we really realized is that blockchain as an underlying technology is brilliant. It's so beautifully eloquent, and the thing that it provides seems to be the thing that most corporations are terrified of, which is transparency and accountability. And it's the thing that we love about it. And so 5 years ago, we developed SongSecure, songsecure.com, which is just a copyright registry on a blockchain. This is not minting your music for NFTs or any of that stuff. We're just simply trying to tackle the copyright framework, which up until now, the copyright information that you register, let's say at the US Copyright Office, sits in an analog vault that's not connected. Everything is siloed. So that copyright data is siloed away from the PROs, so your BMI, ASCAP, CSAC, SOCON, wherever you are, your performing rights organization. It's siloed from your distributor. And so now you give DSPs twice removed from validation all the excuses in the world not to be able to find you to pay you your money, let alone we're not even going to get into the rates that they're offering to pay you in the first place, which are so problematic. But we've created a landscape of excuses, and we just wanted to tackle something that would start chipping away at that. And the other thing that we did was, I'm a regular speaker with the US Copyright Office. I usually do something with them on World IP Day. And, we talk about independent creators and empowerment. And so I have some relationships there. We've had some really interesting conversations. And then through there's WIPO, the World IP Organization, which is more of a global international organization, or a global organization that really is looking at the broader picture of its 192, I believe now, 192 member countries. And you can check me on that number. It may actually be higher now. But so there's about 192 member countries of WIPO, the World IP Organization. And when we looked at copyright, what we realized is that blockchain solves this for all of them, because it puts it all on chain. It makes it all completely auditable, verifiable by anyone who wants to plug in an API or build a crawler that wants to verify and validate this data. It doesn't matter where you're from or what your language is. It doesn't matter which country of origin you registered it from, because it's all on chain. And I think what happens now is you start to see a world where, as music creators, where we're forced to do business in an international landscape with localized tools like the Copyright Office and the PROs. I look to organizations like CSAC that have really positioned themselves to be a global PRO rather than a regional, pure territorial PRO. I think those will be ingenious partners for us going forward. I think they can take a registry like SongSecure that's already being deployed. We're here. We've been live for 5 years. Anyone can use it. We're being deployed in Japan, Denmark, Norway, Sweden,
and
Germany.
When you say being deployed, is there like a regulatory kind of handshake or any kind of connection there?
Well, each territory is different. And so in some territories, we're working with the nonprofit artist rights organizations. And in some cases, we're working, like in Africa, we're working with governmental agencies. And we have 7 countries there we're getting ready to deploy later. Well, probably later this year, they'll be deployed. So those are with government officials. In the UAE, there's a commission that has been established to oversee and help to implement a framework So we're dealing with the entire commission and members of
Yeah,
the
I could
commission.
imagine someone like a UAE would love this kind of innovation because they can just point to it and look like this is how we do our music copyright, because they always like to brag about all their on-chain tech and stuff they got going.
And they have, they have a big push going, and then also there's the Saudi Music 2030 initiative.
Okay.
Which is also our Saudi 2030 initiative, which is all entertainment ecosystem and framework, and they're really looking to be a player on the international market in a really significant way. And so when you start thinking about this, and you think about from Japan to Saudi Arabia, all deploying basically their own portal that's the same chain for copyright data for music creators. And all of a sudden what we've started to do is remove the excuses of all of the middlemen agency, the MLC, which has control over the black box money, but is somehow having a hard time finding the people that it belongs to, because conveniently, if they don't, they get to split that money up amongst the major publishers who they represent.
Wow.
So they're not totally incentivized to get out there and bang the drum and make a lot of noise, even though theoretically they're in control of a billion, maybe multi-billion-dollar black box. Their mandate is specifically to match those funds with the rightful owners and those creators. And there's no limitation as to how much they can pay themselves or allocate for marketing and outreach. So they really have no excuse for not banging the drum. I bet you they got their salary stuff right long before any of the outreach stuff started getting going, and it's barely starting to pick up steam now. And it's still very selective and with very few partners. I think that they could serve a purpose and a function in here, but I think their appointment and the oversight of that function right now is highly problematic. And I think we need tools that provide transparency that's accessible to anyone who wants to get the data and analyze it and digest it in whatever way that they need to understand what's going on, whether it's with revenue, whether it's with who's using my IP. All of this data is accessible and is trackable, and we've had the technology for decades. So there's no excuse why we don't innovate all this.
No doubt. And when you talk about that black box of money, like that's just would be coming from like YouTube, Spotify, like everywhere and anywhere that music's being streamed. They're sending funds in here, but then they're not necessarily being allocated out to the artists. And you're saying a Song Secure is removing the excuses because it's very clear. It'll all be kind of like in a very clear on-chain database. Such and such music belongs to this creator. So how are you disrupting that, and what is your hope for kind of adoption into the future?
So point of clarification on the black box. So just so everybody understands, the music modernization passed 08, I believe, or 06 or something. And one of the things that happened is there's a new mechanical royalty that's derived from on-demand music streamers. So that's anywhere where you can go look up a specific song and play it, whether it's a SoundCloud or a Spotify or Apple Music. Like Pandora, you can't do that. You look up a song on Pandora, it puts together a playlist that may or may not contain the song. Right. So Pandora has found a really diabolical way to skirt this, which is another problem in itself. But that money and that mechanism went into place long before there was an infrastructure or a framework on what to do with that money. How do you then, if you're going to create a new mechanical royalty that all of these companies are going to pay into a trust or a holding company or escrow or quote unquote the black box, then there was literally for almost a decade, there was no framework as to what to do with this money. So there is a tremendous amount of money in that black box.
That's wild.
Is
that your dog or your neighbor's dog?
No, it's the neighbor's dog.
No problem. It's all right. We can edit it out.
It's all good. Yeah, no, we're good. So there's a tremendous amount of money in this black box that, that everyone is working to figure out how do we solve for this problem. And this goes back then to what we talked about with copyright, is because The copyright's not connected to the PRO. The PRO is not connected to the distributor. Nobody's validating data as this IP is getting aggregated through the DSPs, the digital streaming providers. And so by the time the digital streaming providers get it and generate this revenue that they have to allocate somewhere, it's not their problem. And so now we've let it become this giant issue. And so, again, for us, I don't know what the solution is. I know that I'm not going to spend another couple of decades looking back like we have the previous couple of decades in the music industry.
Yeah.
I think we have to look forward. And I think one of the things about looking forward is going, okay, basically, let's start at the very core of the problem. What the hell are we doing with copyright data? What is its value if it cannot be confirmed, validated, or accessed by people who need to confirm whether it's this license goes with this song and the person I got the license from is authorized to do that, or whether it's this song generated 25 cents and I need to pay it to its rightful owners. Again, we have so much technology, and you mentioned one of the projects that we work on is this data to leads and Avoca data. One of the reasons that we're even involved in that is because as we start going down this rabbit hole of unwinding the detachment of all of this data, what we find is that all of the data is there and everybody knows that your data is being bought and sold every day, and lead generation is happening and scrapers are out there and all of these things are happening. So I'm hard pressed to understand why, let's just take a technology guy, for example, like Daniel Ek, who could afford to pay himself last year more than Taylor Swift has made in her entire career.
Wow.
Over $1 billion in compensation in a single year. Okay.
And this is what's his exact role in the industry?
Daniel Ek is the founder and CEO of Spotify.
Okay.
He's the guy who says, "Oh, it doesn't cost you guys anything to make music, so you shouldn't really get compensated anything. But I'm going to make more than the top earning creator in the ecosystem in a single calendar year." And so that guy has no excuse. He has technology. He has all of the source material. He has all of the relationships with the publishers and rights holders, labels, et cetera, et cetera. He has no excuse why he couldn't have been the one who solved for this. I realize that it's not as tremendously lucrative as extracting revenue from, creators' IP and coming up with creative new ways to bundle music with audio books and podcasts to pay you less for what is actually leading people to subscribe to the service. Forget about all that. The guy's got no excuse. They have the money, they have the technology, they have the resources, they have the source material, they have the relationships. Same with the Warner Music is pivoting to, with Robert, their new CEO, who is clearly pivoting to become a tech company. And they could have done this, well, if I'm being honest, in 2014 and 15, when I was screaming up and down the hallways, "Hey guys, we need to talk about blockchain." And nobody wanted to listen. So January 2016 rolled around and New Year's rolled around, and I woke up and I said, I'm not going to do this for another day. And I resigned that very day. And that's when I went deep into blockchain and Web3. And I'm such an enthusiast and such a believer, but I think we have to be practical and reasonable, and we have to start solving some of the greater core issues, even though it's not a patch that just heals the wound. It's a slow fix where the more people start to adopt it and use it, the more partners we have, the more legacy music companies, the more independent creators, the more new devs that are building the next streaming model or the next direct-to-fan sales model are using these tools and these methods of validation.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think you hit on two things there. So on one hand, I'm just wondering, does it matter what chain it's on? Like I was looking through kind of your tech and it says it's on the Eon blockchain, and it sounds like you're kind of building out from there. So I was just curious, like,
No, Neo.
oh, Neo, sorry,
Neo.
yeah,
We're
Neo
on Neo
blockchain.
right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we're on Neo right now, and we've been for the last few months testing what we call mirrors, basically mirror deployments, and working on settling between all of the different chain data. And obviously using Chainlink and a few other technologies that are out there. Polkadot's got some pretty cool tools, but Chainlink right now has been sort of our savior for threading all of this stuff together.
Okay.
For us, we're chain agnostic. I want creators to be able to, I mean, personally, I think music creators should follow. There's some good examples out there. I throw out Kane Mayfield all the time. He's a great example of someone who kind of learned about each of the different chain ecosystems and then decided, like, okay, I think there's some people for me here who would appreciate what I do here, and there's some people who might appreciate what I do here. So I'm going to kind of build here, and then I'm going to build here, and then I'm going to build here. And then he kind of stays active in those communities. So he doesn't, this is a big thing that I see with a lot of just greater sort of NFT projects overall, creators who are going to do, whether it's a gaming project or whatever, and we can talk about that next, but guys who really come into this thing very short-sighted, and whether you wear it on your sleeve or whether it's just by your actions, everyone can see that you're just here to extract revenue and resources to try and jumpstart your crazy idea. And there's a difference between being here to build for the long term and trying to come over here to get your bag to go run off and make your crazy dreams come true.
No doubt. Yeah, there's a lot of extraction happening. And shout out to Kane Mayfield. I believe he's actually joining the Pepe Fest over at Beeple's studio this weekend, or somehow his art is incorporated there with DJ Skrilla as well. Shout out to Skrilla. Some leaders in the Pepe culture over there in the Bitcoin space, so they're all connecting with Beeple's. Got his big Pepe Fest happening, and it was funny when he first announced it. I think he was very much looking more at like the Ethereum space, and then there were a lot of like the rare Pepe guys and stuff being like, "Oh, you gonna do Pepe Fest and not have us?" And then he was like, "Oh, I have to open it up," and like he opened it up to everyone, and it looks like it's going to be a pretty cool event. So shout out to the Pepe Fest going on over there.
Awesome.
But yeah, Kane Mayfield definitely is here for the culture, for adding to the overall ecosystem, right? And I think that's an important point. Just before we move on from Song Secure, though, you did also mention having kind of the API option and the ability to really kind of plug into it and having these partnerships around the globe. So is this kind of how you see the Song Secure kind of network effect growing from here? And like you just mentioned, being blockchain agnostic, which is huge, so you'll be able to kind of have this expand across different blockchains, theoretically over time, right? So like how important is kind of that API integration piece, and how are you managing that?
So right now we've been working with a closed group of partners. We have two different levels, sort of a dev level and an enterprise level of API. And so we're working with major rights manager and performance rights organization on how we implement that and streamline registration. So the same registration data that you would put on your copyright, instead of having to go to then your PRO and then the MLC and then Sound Exchange and register all separate times, that same registration would be aggregated and you would just validate it at each stop and go, yes, that aggregated correctly, or edit, I need to make this adjustment. But that way, there's a connective string all the way through, and it makes it easier. So on the one hand, on the enterprise level, that's how we're working. On the dev level, we have game projects, and like I said, we're working with some people who are working with developing some new streaming ecosystems that they want to try. Some of them I think look kind of promising, but we'll see what happens when they launch and how they're adopted. And what we, again, with those guys, what we want to be able to do is give them a clear path and give the music creators a clear path. And so, we have 14, 15,000 users who will be able to opt in on this new avenue of monetization with this partner with this new streaming service. And if they decide to opt in, and their music is connected right into the ecosystem, and that it's points right back to their copyright, their hash, and they can connect their payout stuff. And since, before we move on to gaming, I'll share with you, in addition to Song Secure, we launched that about 5 years ago. It's been growing pretty steady. A couple of years after that, we launched artisttoolbox.ai. Artist Toolbox AI is tools and utilities for music creators. We stay away from the novelty application of things that are really going to create your music, but things like stem splitter, the MIDI converter, lyric extractor to make it easy for you to then aggregate lyrics throughout the DSPs and things like that. It's got a bunch of great tools like that. And then most recently, we've just come out of beta and quietly soft launched our distribution ecosystem, which is called Distro Secure. So distrosecure.com is a fully connected distribution ecosystem to all of the traditional Web 2 stuff, but also with a fully connected back end. So rather than having to go look at your data in Spotify for Artists or Apple Music for Artists, you're going to be able to see all of this data in one dashboard. Additionally, you can connect in obviously all of your social media stuff, and we have a product called TuneBio, which is our Linktree answer. It's basically built for musicians. We're music creators, so everything we build is for music creators. And there's some cool features coming in TuneBio, like automatically pull your latest track from YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music title, so you don't always have to remember, oh, did I update my link? And you can still put custom links and things like that. So all of this will be connected into a seamless dashboard, as well as any of your Web3 endeavors. And that's where it gets really interesting, because what we're really trying to pull together is an ecosystem where all of the things you're doing, you can start to actually see what is your return versus the sort of energy and effort that you're putting out. Because, while you might go try and chase 1 million streams, you could theoretically put that energy and effort into trying to sell 100 NFTs over a 3-month period. And you know what? You're going to do way better on the NFTs, or maybe you have some other ecosystem where it's just a fans direct. Maybe you're just doing digital downloads and you have a collectible claim NFT, and then you can do a burn and redeem for limited vinyl. There's so many amazing creative things that artists can do nowadays. We're just trying to give them a place that connects it all, that they have the freedom to really see side by side with unbiased filters that just go, here's where you're actually seeing a return on your investment. Here's where you're getting genuine support and value for your creative efforts versus this really passive support that happens in streaming that doesn't necessarily convert to they're going to come see you live, or they're going to click your link, or they're going to join you on a live stream or in the metaverse. We have to move away from that aggregating and chasing streams mentality, and we have to take one of the beautiful things that's happened in Web3 is the concept of community. And while people throw the word around a lot, I think you have to build a fan community around not just your music, but a shared love of music overall.
No doubt. And I think Kane Mayfield, to your point, has done that fairly well. I can give a shout out to Eunice as well, as another artist we've had on the show who's been doing really well. I think she just had a recent drop, or maybe it hasn't even dropped yet, with Gala Music, which is another interesting platform. There's a lot of these music and sound.xyz being another one, music platforms that are trying to kind of bring a kind of Web 2 vibe into Web 3. And, I think we could have an interesting conversation about that. But before we move on from music, I am curious, what do you think it's going to take for kind of the music industry to do more of what you just mentioned with the adoption, whether it's token gating, whether it's, having, a special edition vinyl that you can only get if you own the NFT, concerts in the metaverse where NFTs are the tickets kind of thing. I heard some rumors, Eminem just dropped his recent album, right? And he had been dabbling in the NFT space a bit. And we see Snoop Dogg talking about Death Row being an on-chain kind of record label, if you want to call it that. So there are some kind of major players that are talking about it and at least are touching the blockchain in some way. But, Eminem just dropped this new album. I haven't heard about any Web3 components so far. And I just wonder, what's it going to take for someone like an Eminem or anyone really to just be kind of more receptive to incorporating NFTs and giving their fans who want to open a crypto wallet, and many probably already have one, right, who want to take advantage of a Web3 angle. What's it going to take for them to just throw that out there? Is it really like
honestly
what's stopping them from
honestly, I don't think it's for them,
right? Okay.
I don't think it's a Eminem. I don't think it's a big name.
Okay.
I think it's 300 Kane Mayfields in their own lane that are all building brick by brick. I think it's a La Russell, right? It's someone like that that has momentum, traction, independence. They've already built their foundation on this direct fan hand-to-hand sort of transaction and engagement, and I'm accessible to you. They're there already. I think it's guys like that, and it's guys like Kane. And I think it's going to take a couple hundred of them, and those use cases are going to aggregate. And then what happens, unfortunately, is that the Steve Aokis and the bigger names come over and they do something flashy on the front end and flat on the back end. And then all the greater fans get very discouraged, and then they don't go support the local guy or the Kane Mayfield or the Russell or the Oblé Reed or whoever the next guy who does something like this is, who's really, really a dope artist. And I think those big names actually wind up doing more harm than good because they're not bought in. And I get it. I'm not, here to debate whether they should even be bought in or whatever. I get it. You're already settled. You've already built your defensible space. You got bankroll. You've got houses. You don't have the hunger that you used to have, and therefore you're not as concerned about the issues of control and aggregation and sort of rampant depreciation and devaluation of our contributions and what we do. I think you're far too removed from it at that level.
No doubt. All right. So the slow and steady approach is probably better, and we want more artists in here for the culture, yeah.
And I think building, and listen, to that point, right? Like you said, like Eunice and Kane, and so these are people who spent time in the space, and just like they spent time developing their musical skills, and then they spent time considering how the two blend together, where they meet, and how they bring them together to build. And again, I think that when the headline is Steve Aoki drops the NFT and does $1 million, I think every other artist that rushes over here thinks, oh, boom, funded. I'm going to go extract a bunch of money. These dummies don't know what's going on, and I can give them a couple of songs, and who cares? They don't even know, and then it doesn't work, and then they go to all their musician buddies and go, that Web3 stuff ain't shit. It's all bullshit. It's nonsense. Right. It's all fake. It's all fake. When the only thing that's fake was your intentions.
100%.
If you came over here with genuine intentions, you would have had an authentic experience that you would have at least taken something away from. And in reality, if you came over here with authentic intentions, you're probably still here, because everybody I've seen since 2016 who's come into this space with authentic intentions, even if their initial idea didn't work, is still here, still building, and still holding their head up and standing on the principle of what the space is.
And it takes some patience, and obviously there's a certain element of sales being able to sell yourself, being able to promote yourself, that is required to a certain extent. But to your point, the longer you stay in the space, the longer it's clear that you're genuine and authentic with what you're trying to put out, and the artwork speaks for itself. You know, you will get fans eventually, and be here for the culture. I think that's what it's all about. Amazing, man. I could definitely talk Web3 music with you all day. So just wrapping this up, right? So under the Artist Intelligence Labs, you got the Distro Secure, you got the Artist Toolbox.ai, and you got Song Secure, among other things. And you're kind of wrapping this all up and really have a global offering to creators and musicians, I should say, to really take their kind of creativity to this
publishers,
next level.
Indie labels. Some of our clients that we've onboarded initially for our distribution include some legacy labels and rights holders that have recently exercised their reversion clauses and got all their rights back.
Nice.
And now they're going to re-release all of their music through our distribution ecosystem because they get to keep more of their money and we don't have hidden fees like DistroKid.
There you go.
So, you know.
All right, Artist Intelligence Labs for the win. So what's the best way to reach out to you for any artist listeners out there who want to touch base and try to tap in?
Oh man, you could pretty much hit me on any of the platforms. I don't spend a lot of time on X. It's just I'm so busy, and it just takes time, and you really have to be careful about getting on stages on X because you don't know who you're going to be on a stage next to or associated with in other people's minds. And I think that there's a lot of, you know, stuff going on over there, as like you can see from Natalie's recent tweets.
It's crazy.
You know, these things are happening still on a daily and weekly basis. And I think, again, I think it's important to be intentional. So, look, I'm available in the social media spaces. If you want to go old school, I do a room every morning, Monday through Friday, from 8 a.m. Eastern to about noon. I'm usually in there for about an hour or so every day. It's called Music Networking No Egos. It's on the Clubhouse app, and it's hosted by a guy named Rothstein Beats, who's a really solid dude who's just trying to help out artists and network, and has got some really good professionals that come in that room, and we have a really good time every morning. And you know, anyone is welcome. You can reach out to me on any of the platforms, you know,
it's a vibe.
Go to artistintelligencelabs.com and check out any of the products and the suite of stuff we do.
Awesome. Artistintelligencelabs.com. You can also check out distrosecure.com. I know they got the join up option on the site there. Shout out to Rothstein. You know, I do try to jump in there, still on the good old Clubhouse. You know, there are still some good rooms over there. Every morning it's going. So Music Networking No Egos. I'll actually drop the link for that in the description of this episode as well. So anyone who wants to tap in with the community.
For old school fans, we used to do a room on Clubhouse called the Music Business Red Pill Sessions.
I missed that room.
Me and my partner, David Lotwin, we're getting ready to bring the Music Business Red Pill Sessions back on an app called Flock. And I will have more details on that coming very soon.
Oh, Flock. All right. I haven't heard about that one yet. But yeah, those Red Pill sessions were amazing. Definitely a big part of my kind of adoption of the Web3 music in general, and really just the idea.
I love those rooms.
Yeah, trying to empower the creators, you know, it was always fun. Awesome.
And so many great guests, and, you know, 45 King would hang out in there. There's just so many people would come in. And
45 King.
Great stories. And it was just great to hear the history from the people who made it, you know.
From them direct. Shout out to Clubhouse, honestly. Those type of experiences, and even meeting you and being able to learn so much about the music industry, I gotta give it up to Clubhouse. It's pretty awesome. And to your point, X is definitely a crazy mess these days, or Twitter. So no need to go over there. All right, let's switch it up. Let's talk gaming a little bit here. I am very curious about the Thulu verse and everything they're building. It's a bit of a mobile game. Tell us about it.
Let's go back a little further. So a few years ago, as you know, I was part of a group that helped launch a company called Random Games with a guy named Tony Harmon, who was the former president of Nintendo North America for 16 years. And with that project, they launched the Unioverse. So the Unioverse is still going strong. I'm not affiliated with this, but I talk about people, and their intentions are shown by their actions. And the fact that while some of these guys' contemporaries have fled this space and abandoned their projects, they have actually been making progress. They recently just held a contest where the winner got $15,000. They've deployed a new world. There's new tools. They just dropped a new a hero for their world. So unioverse.com. I listen, Web3, Building with Intention, Wyeth and Tony, who are leading that project, are phenomenally great guys. And they really have the right intention on what they're trying to create and creating something that's going to be valuable for everybody who participates in it on some level, whether it's your entertainment value, whether you take some of this IP and you spin up your own lore and you create your own series or comic books, or who knows what's going to happen from this. But I love the intention and what they're doing. And then a mutual friend and a guy that I've known for a lot longer than I've known those two guys is a guy named Jason Kaler, who runs a company called Cosmic Foundry. Sorry, they recently changed their name. So they're called Cosmic Foundry, and they've launched the Cthulhu-verse. Now, they are Web2, Web3 gaming. They're really bullish on NFTs and NFT gaming, and they've done some pretty great stuff. Their first two games are live. One of them you can get on the App Store. And then one of them you can play online on any device. And they're building accessible puzzle games, battle games, things like that. I think, again, where they're headed and the core of the team, I think you can just look at the work that they've put in and the product they've developed and know that their intentions are genuine.
Yeah, 100%. I can see it's a very cool kind of mobile game style. How do you feel about the way that Web3 is kind of integrated, right? Like, we've talked to company that's working on wallets as a service, and the idea that integrating the wallet is such like a key point of friction, right, and making that as kind of seamless as possible. How are these kind of gaming companies that you're talking to handling that? I know I'm a big fan of the Unioverse as well, for sure, and they did a pretty good job of connecting it kind of through your phone, and they have it's kind of Web 2, but then it links up with your wallet and has the Web 3 component in there. How important is that kind of seamlessness?
So, and look, as a strategist, this is where I live, right? Is like, I look at this pain point, and it's a total pain point. It is very difficult when you get into the onboarding part. It seems like it should be easy because we're all here and we've been dealing with this for years. But when you start helping somebody create a wallet, it gets very intimidating for the average person, especially when they're not technologically savvy, so to speak. They're maybe app savvy where, if it's, fill in the form and click next, they can do that. But it feels very technical. And so we have to, as developers in this space, we have to come up with ways, and I talk about this in music too, where we meet our fans, our users, or the people we want to adopt these projects where they are as best we can. And so Unioverse is the perfect example of a really elegant solution where, you got to create a wallet and you're going to go through it. You're going to at some point, but you're going to, less technical, you're going to connect your wallet to the Unioverse, and then you're going to verify it and tether that to your mobile device. And then going forward, you're never going to expose your wallet again, because everything is validated and tethered to your mobile device, which requires a prominent carrier with a named account. It can't be a burner phone or, all this stuff. So now you get into a little bit of resistance from the hardcore Web3 guys, because then, make no mistake about it, you're 2/3 of the way to KYC.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But we don't get to have it all the ways. Yeah. Right. We don't get to have it all the ways. So we have to figure out how we meet people where they are. And then once we show them something that they can sink their teeth into or give them a reason to be here, what we find is now there is now there's a marketplace to rent your Unioverse heroes. They did the collectibles and then the merge and you get mints you a new collectible. They did all of these cool things that you could be a part of to complete the set and get protons. And now they've announced where that's going with the coin and where they're going to do. And so now you start to see how this entire ecosystem get very excited, but you also see how you bring along a fan base, a basic community that are at different levels. Some of those people in that community are avid Web3, guys. They're well versed. They're moving in the community to help organize smaller groups, to help onboard new members, to bring them into the contests and things. They're now partnering with other communities where they're able to start bridging the gap and then giving people from outside of this Web3 world a real incentive to come in and participate. Hey, if you're a gamer and it's a $15,000 contest that starts Friday and it's going to be done Sunday, yo, you're either going to figure out how to get in or you're not. Right. If you're a gamer, you want to be in it. I got to play a game for a few hours on a weekend and maybe I can win 15 grand. Hey, let's see what this game's all about. Yeah. Oh, it's a pretty good game developed by guys who have developed iconic games over the years. Turns out this thing's a real contender. And so now you get introduced to the world and the games and the community, and then you see there's all these other creative ways that you can participate. And then Cthulhu and Cthulhuverse and what they're doing, well, again, in their own way that's organic to their ecosystem, do the same thing where they have games that are Web 2 and they have games that are Web 3, and they will eventually have games that theoretically you may play to a certain level and then it shifts from a Web 2 game to a Web 3 game, and you sort of have to gamify onboarding to transition them to that next. So there's a lot of ways to do this, and I think we just need to get creative, and I think we need to work with the fans of these projects. And that's the other thing I will say that both projects have done very well, is they listen to the user feedback, they participate in community town halls and community meetings where they talk to all these people, they get their voice back, they help promote and help users sell user-generated material that they're then putting out to their own marketplace to sell, and they don't even take a fee off of it. They're just like, hey, we love what you did with that. We're going to boost this post.
That's awesome. That's true community there for sure.
Right? And so I think it is about intention. And so I think gaming is not, I hear some narrative that Web3 gaming is dead. And I would argue that the last iteration of the quote unquote presumed kings of Web3 gaming are dead. Long live the kings. The people who are actually building and developing are the ones that were going to bring this thing home anyway. And I think you have, guys like the crew at Unioverse and guys like the crew at Cosmic Foundry who are experienced professionals who have been doing this. They build really compelling high-level games that have stood the test of time. That's and epic. They see what's happening in Web3 and they're true believers like you and I are.
Yeah. And so on the one kind of, I think, pain point for the developers in Web3, and we just had Justin Gary on our last episode, actually, shout out to him. He's in the kind of creator, or how do you call it, trading card games like Magic the Gathering. He created his own called Ascension, and then they just created a digital version called, or a different game kind of, Soul Forge, which has been out for about 10 years, but now they have Soul Forge Fusion, which they're again bringing the digital collectibles on chain. They're working with Solana, but one of the pain points that I kind of brought up, and again, he's another one who's been in there for decades now, so he's got a fan base that actually loves his games. It's not just about trying to sell everyone on blockchain, but I asked him this question, and I'm curious of your thoughts on it, is like, how do you protect against the speculators, right? So like even in Unioverse, for example, since you kind of told me about their project kind of right from launch, I've been in there, I've been watching, and I've seen kind of the way that some of the floor prices have spiked up and gone down, and a lot of the narrative around, oh, well, you're diluting this and that, or you're creating too many heroes, and that conversation in the Discord. And so I think it often comes down to the speculators on one hand and those that really want to see the monetary value of the project go up, and then the gamers on the other hand, who, yes, they are interested in the value side of it and they love the idea of actually owning these digital assets in their own sovereign wallet, but they also want the game to be fun, and they're just here to actually find a cool, fun new game, right? And so I feel like you always want your majority of the fans or the players to be that latter group, right? The people who actually love the game and find it fun. You don't want to have, 50, 60, 70% of those playing the game more in the speculator group, because I think that's more risky, that it just kind of whittles away when they don't reach, whatever goal they're hoping to, get to through their speculation. So just curious on your thoughts on like speculation versus gamers, and how, you kind of navigate that. Cause I feel like every Web3 game project has to kind of have a way to balance that.
Yeah, there's no, listen, I think anyone who tells you that they've solved for that is bold-faced lying. I don't think there is a solution for that. I think at some level you are going to have speculators. I think the best you could do is mitigate that.
Oh, your microphone's going a little quiet. Sorry, I don't know.
Oh, no. Hold on 1 second.
It's okay. Give you a minute. Get your audio going. Shout out K-Bot. Anyone else joining in the chat? Appreciate you for hanging in there. It's been a really great conversation. Learning from Hakim Draper.
Hey. No.
Hey. Mic check.
Yep. Sorry.
All good. Okay.
Oh, I forgot my mic wasn't muted. I was telling the dog no.
Cool. So yeah, speculators versus gamers.
Mike's better.
Yeah, it's much better.
Yeah, Mike's better. Yeah. So I think so. Look, I think it's virtually impossible to actually solve for that. I think that what the guys at Random Games and Universe did to mitigate that as best they could was about as good as it gets that I've seen. I wish I could take credit for that strategy to mitigate, but man, they did a brilliant job of, and again, it's sort of taking from wallet to sort of tethering it to this verified cell phone account, and it helps eliminate the bots and the people who get 20 burner phones and right. Do all that. So I think that's the best you could do, man, is mitigate as best you can. And
make it fun, right?
And then the other thing is you have to, in the end, you can mitigate that side as best you can, but I think on the other side, then you have to redouble your commitment. Hey, I think you have to redouble your commitment to creating value for your community, whether it's a quality game or whether it's entertaining events, or I don't know what you do, but you got to redouble that commitment to really creating value.
100%. It's all good. Dang, neighbor's dog out here barking at our interview. All right. Wait for Hakim to get back here. Really, really far-reaching conversation about gaming and music.
Sorry about that.
The Web3 blockchain space. No problem. So what happens, you're hanging out outside on a beautiful California day, you might get some dogs nearby. I'm curious on your thoughts on the metaverse, right? Kind of expanding from gaming and actual game projects specifically into the concept of this far-reaching digital world where we're buying space. And, you and I both have plots in the Voxels metaverse, for example, and there's Decentraland, there's Sandbox. Those are kind of the three big ones that I've been more familiar with, but there are, of course, others. But how do you feel about kind of the growth of the metaverse in general? Is there one project that you're kind of interested in, or you see doing things the right way? Just how you feel about kind of that evolution and how it plays into kind of maybe the broader Web3 gaming evolution.
Honestly, I look at the metaverse like I look at blockchain. I am verse agnostic. I think that if when I work with artists or when we're working on projects, if I can come up with a compelling application, then certainly I would do it. When people host events, I certainly go through and try and check them out and attend and support as much as I can. I think I'd love to see a lot more happen in that realm, but I think at the same time, it's still a space that's nascent and finding its footing. As far as what are the actual experiences, because everything's really, if you sort of take a step back and look at it, it's really been geared towards developers and sort of the tech savvy initiated. And I think that for me, I live in the music world where, for instance, last night, we had a show. There was 1,400, 1,800 people there, something like that. How do I take 1,800 people from around the world in a virtual space and give them the experience that we had in that venue last night? And I think that's the challenge. That's where we're getting to. I think that's where we're going to get closer to. I think people are building cooler experiences. I think that everyone needs to, from a music standpoint, I think we need to look at creative ways to both develop as a collective and implement different strategies into our own ecosystem where they're appropriate.
Yeah.
And I think that, it's one of the things that I see with artists is they'll have an idea and they'll kind of build out a space and then they'll just kind of try and force it. And I just urge everyone to take a step back and remove your tech savvy side and assume you're just a fan or a consumer. And then think about what's that experience for them, what's going to make it compelling or entertaining or worth it.
Yeah, and I think
that's where we got to get creative.
Yeah, it definitely requires some creativity, right? And I think about, like, for example, the Travis Scott concert that he did in the Fortnite metaverse, right? Yeah. Not the same, not on chain, obviously, but the audience, the impact, the views that they got on the YouTube video after, like, it's just monumental, right? But maybe the creativity there was to go where the kids are, go where the people are, right?
And then it was just
whereas DCL, voxels, they're all pretty quiet, right? Like, you're lucky if you can get 50 to 100 people to show up at a single event there, right? So I'm curious, what's it going to take? Since the very first episode of this show, I've been talking about gamers adopting the blockchain and specifically the on-chain metaverse as a kind of just hangout, right? Like a digital community. You have all this opportunity. It seems like a natural fit, but gamers, 90% of them have zero interest in blockchain, unfortunately, at least as of right now. And so there hasn't been that adoption. And so, yeah, maybe it is somehow going to where they already are and making it more fun, making the value so clear that everyone's going to want that thing in their, wallet. I don't know.
Well,
I'm curious.
That's been part of the problem, right? Is the Fortnite use case is very misleading.
Right.
A, it doesn't sell tickets. B, it's a captive audience. It's right. It's a fan reward, right? It comes out of a marketing budget. It's not like they're having to get anything out of it other than how many people can we get on the server at one time to watch this thing, and then how many aggregate views, to your point, afterwards can we create to generate new users and bring people in, and then blah blah blah. It's a loss leader, right? And so it's a bit of a disingenuous example, and I think it misleads a lot of musicians who think they should just be able to do a show in any old metaverse and get a bunch of people there.
Right.
And I think the idea is quite the opposite. I think that we can look at that model, and I think that's the idea we need to take as musicians. I think you need to find people who are building bigger worlds, metaverses, whatever, that you can partner with very early on and build their festival that you do every year, or build a quarterly musical event or something with them that helps support and onboard. I think we have to get in early, and I think that's how we're going to meet people where they are. Right now, the fans you're going to find over there are also going to be technology early adopters.
Yeah.
And so when we see other metaverses or new metaverse projects pop up, I frankly think they present an opportunity for artists to find their footing in the space and for people who are trying to build new metaverses to bring value add like the bigger players do, like these guys, but for a more independent, free thinking, forward thinking community.
For sure.
And frankly, I think if you went on the fringes where it's a bunch of builders and early adopters, I don't think they want Travis Scott. I think they want Kane Mayfield, right?
Yeah,
like,
I feel that. So what about those?
I mean? So, yeah.
What about those platforms that already exist, though, right? Like, so on one hand, I think DCL is doing a lot of things right. I think they have a lot of kind of big brands, the Gucci's and the Porsche and other kind of big brands in there that have done, events that have done all right. I don't think they've had huge amounts of people show up, but they've had a decent audience and they're able to promote their brand. So Decentraland, I think in some ways has been doing this right. But looking at Voxels, where it's just so quiet and dead, and I don't know what the situation is in the back end there. But to your point, it's also in that kind of nascent stage where someone like a Kane Mayfield or anyone who's already got a fan base in Web3 could start throwing events in a voxel spot and maybe make it more valuable for people to come, even if the value is just entertainment and community, right? Having fun, hanging out. And so I wonder, like,
here's where I see it working more like this. Kane is in the Pepe community and building over there on Bitcoin.
Right.
Jigar and Rad Audio and some of these guys have been building in bitmaps.
Right.
And again, I think it's meeting fans where they are. Mm-hmm. So you have a world that's built there native in that sort of land, and you have an artist who's built his brand up native in that land. I think the two of them and the people who are fans of sort of both communities are the group that put their head together and figure out how to make this thing compelling. And I think little pockets of that, a few little pockets of that, are really the path forward. I think we, again, you have a lot of people who want to talk about like mass adoption and all these other things. Yeah. That's not really a concern right now. A concern right now is just how do we make this adoptable and digestible to anyone who may become a fan of my musical works tomorrow.
Right.
That's my only real concern. And I think that when the path to the artist organically takes you from, SoundCloud and where YouTube, wherever else you may discover a guy like Kane, and then you do Google search and maybe you find handprints or you find the stuff he's doing on the Pepe stuff and you go, oh, he does NFTs, and you kind of come down that rabbit hole. And then from there you become a fan. Now you've sort of committed and you're a fan and you're in the world, and maybe you bought one or two things or you copped a download or whatever it was. And then they introduce you to the next step of like, hey, if you want to come further into this fandom, you're already here in the world. You've already onboarded with all of the technology that you may ever need as far as accessing this. I don't need you to download a new wallet or create a new key or do anything like that.
Right.
Come over here and check out this thing I'm going to have over here.
No doubt.
And shout out to I think it has to be much more. I think it has to be way more organic like that. And I'll just say real quick, and I second that shout out to Jigar, because again, as a developer, right, he just did what Kane did as a music artist. Mm-hmm. The grass is greenest where you water it, so find a place where you're comfortable and start watering it and tending to your lawn. And that's what he did. And originally it was on voxels, and Bitmaps came up and he was just killing it in voxels. And then Bitmaps comes up and like he's so far ahead in what he's building and what he's doing and the technology. And he gets to take everything that he learned from this previous ecosystem and then blow that out to a whole nother level.
100%.
So yeah, I think it's the same thing. I think it's important for creators to stop looking for the flashy thing and work with people who are here building for the long term.
1,000%.
I think those are all people who are building here for the long term.
Yeah, Jigar had a Yeah, I'd recommend everyone to go check out our latest episode with Jagar. I believe it was episode 98 or so, but definitely check that out because he did give a good background on Bitmap and what he's been building, and been very successful in being able to sell those plots, but also actually helping the team conceptualize what a voxel-based metaverse built on Bitcoin could actually look like. So he's actually right on the ground level of that entire metaverse project, and I hope it does pan out as well as they're kind of foreseeing or hoping for.
And that organic sort of community that he has, combined with the organic community of support that McCain has, all those people are the people who can figure out how to make events in that space compelling.
1,000%.
Those are all the people who could really put their heads together, put their feedback and input in, which is how they've been building to this point. Mm-hmm. Kane talks a lot of the stuff through. He has ideas. He talks through with people. He doesn't do every idea he has, but the ones that he flushes out in his mind that seem executable, he certainly executes them. And I think that you just have to take that approach if you're going to try and move over here in the Web3 space. I think be patient. Don't look at Steve Akai or any of these big names or whoever they are. Don't look at those. Those are anomalies of extraction. Right. And the reality is it's a slow burn. It's a slow build, just like anywhere else. If you're trying to build a music career or trying to build up, any kind of career, frankly, you got to start somewhere and just get really, really good at that thing and then start building.
Anomalies of extraction. I like that. You got to coin that one there, Hakim. Okay, so when it comes to the metaverse, I'm hearing like you don't think it's necessarily an either or between finding the fans in the metaverse, which at this point I think is next to impossible, or even necessarily bringing your fans into a chosen metaverse, because that is also a very large lift, right? It's really more about something genuine and just finding that right time and place and kind of just being consistent with it, I guess is what you're saying.
Yeah. Look, I think that, and I think when people come up with compelling ideas with new technology, the users will come, the fans will come. And so that's on all of us. That may be the creator of the space, or it may be the artist who's trying to throw a virtual concert in the metaverse. Right. You still have to step outside of the box a little bit and think about how, from a fan perspective, can you make that compelling? And there's a lot of tools. Listen, man, I think a lot of the stuff was right there. Remember POAPs and, like these proof of attendance, then all of these different things. It's all right there. It's just, it's going to take the right artists and the right team to start building in that direction. And I'll say this, we're working with an artist who a couple of years ago, we weren't working with him. We just advised a little, but anyway, he's a really good artist, a kid named Oblate Reed. He's really dope. 2 years ago, he basically was nowhere. He had no following and no anything. And if you go look at him now, it's like this dude's on. He's like the next big thing. He's going to blow.
Let's go.
That's brick by brick. That didn't cost a lot of money. That wasn't because he has some deep budget. That dude is the most humble, hardworking kid that I've met in probably a decade in the music business, as far as artists who are going to earn it. And if that guy came over here into Web3 and built like he just built for the last 2 years in the traditional world, where he went from literally nothing to having 100,000 plus monthly listeners and millions of streams on his songs, and every label wants to talk to him, and he's got tons of shows, and he's everything every artist dreams about doing, he's living it right now. And it's hard work. It's just consistency and building through the parts where you lose faith.
And what does it take to convince an Oblate Reed to adopt some Web3 angle?
I think he'll adopt something when it's organic for him and what he's doing. I think right now the stuff he's doing with like the Run Club is more outside stuff and IRL stuff. And I think it's very organic to his ecosystem, but he also tutors kids and he's really smart. And so, there's some elements of that maybe, that can be incorporated. I don't know.
Yeah, some tech education,
Yeah. I think eventually there certainly is a component, but right now he's very in the sort of IRL space since that's where all of his momentum is. But I don't think it's, I think my point though is that any artist who can get dope at their craft, you have to move beyond your arrogance and convincing yourself that you're dope, and you have to like genuinely get so dope that fans who listen to your music are like, you're dope. So like, if you can get to there, then it goes back to the grass is green is where you water it, right? Where they're after 2 years, where they're making decent money, maybe 6 figures, they probably could have been at 7 figures by now if they would have put that same energy over here for 2 years and building with intention of things that create value and engage with their fans.
Yeah. So it's just about right time and place essentially then, right?
And and you gotta see it. It's not right time and place. It's you have to decide. Right. You have to make a decision that this is worth your intention. And then just like you're trying to build up your fan base or your brand there, you can do the same thing here. You can do them simultaneously as part of your overarching strategy. I'm working with an artist that we're getting ready to start executing his strategy, and he will certainly have a presence over here.
Nice.
And, so look, I think that artists just have to make the intentional decision that you're going to be here for the long term, and that these endeavors that you do over here aren't for funding. Right? It's fan engagement, and it's building your fan community. And the more you interact and transact with your fan community, the more you're going to understand how you can return value to them in creative ways, whether it's t-shirts or hoodies, or whether it's getting with a guy like Tigger to do a bunch of, metaverse clothes for you to wear for your, for your thing to wear, or whatever it is. There's tons of ways that you can interact and engage with them once you're here and they're here. But I think you have to be very intentional. And I think that artists in today's landscape have to make a decision right now at the very beginning on if they actually believe that streaming in its current form is going to be the business model of the future for them or not.
Shouldn't be a business model for anyone.
Don't believe
Shouldn't
it
be a primary business model for anybody.
Generally speaking, I don't think it's sustainable, mainly because, we talked about how much this guy pays himself, but also the fact that it's been around for 15, 16 years and they've had one profitable year. Maybe this year will be number 2. So 2 profitable years, and you did that by bundling with audiobooks and screwing over the artists who you built your brick house with. So do I think it's a sustainable business model? Never thought it was a sustainable business model. In 15 years, they couldn't figure out how to make a profit, even though they did $150 million in revenue.
Wild.
It's never been a sustainable business model. And so, I don't believe that it's a sustainable business model. And I believe that...
and now vinyls are making a comeback. A lot of
Well, vinyls are making a comeback. Lucian Grange and Elliot Grange are taking over the label ecosystem. They're doing some very forward thinking technologically wise. I think you have Robert, who's the new CEO over at Warner, who comes from the tech world, who's also hiring people from Google and Netflix and some of the tech and dev people that have come from that world. I think we're about to see a parabolic shift in the entire thing.
Okay. And do you think Warner's going to try to... Sorry.
Well, let me finish that statement. I think that we're all going to be lost if we don't have a solid, transparent trail of data as to who owns our IP. Who is the actual original creator? So I hate to sound like a shill, but Song Secure. I didn't just build this thing for no reason. This thing is here because we understand that the landscape is shifting. Things are going to get more fractured and more digital. And if we don't start removing the excuses for DSPs and aggregators to say, we didn't know how to match this up with its rightful creator, we're going to just get deeper into the woods.
No more excuses.
That's my 2 cents.
I love it. Song Secure to the rescue. And so you think Warner is really going to be leading the pack in this kind of digital asset conversation, right? Especially when it comes to music and entertainment.
They already are.
Yeah.
They already are.
Yeah.
They already are.
I haven't looked at it that closely, so.
Well, here, consider this. I'll consider this. So back when the NFT stuff happened, we had all this conversation about all of the labels having to go back and amend agreements and get all these artists to sign all these agreements about NFTs. So everybody, Warner, Universal, Sony did, okay? But only one company also included new technologies, both known and unknown to us to this day. So, well, Universal had to go back for the last year and get all of their artists to sign another amendment about their ability to be able to claim their voices with AI, right? To clone their voices with AI, right? They had to get them to sign another agreement, amend their other agreement. Warner wasn't worried about that. They've already positioned themselves to be a tech company. They've already positioned themselves by the person who's running the company and the senior leadership that he's bringing in under him. It's very, and then again, you have Elliot Grange taking over the Atlantic Records ecosystem. The son of the guy who owns the largest competitor to Warner just took over one of the largest divisions within Warner Music.
Wow.
Warner Music has acknowledged that they're going to be a tech company going forward, and they're going to let Universal be the music company. And it's going to be interesting to see where it goes. But I think we're in for a parabolic shakeup where, while nobody believes that Spotify is going to go away, I remember the time, and I'm sure you may too, when everyone said, "Are you kidding? MySpace ain't going nowhere. Look how many people use it."
Yeah.
Okay, MySpace. You know,
and even Apple Music, there was a time everyone thought Apple Music was going to be the go-to, and then Spotify quickly eclipsed it, and it was just like, yeah.
Yeah, what does it say that Warren Buffett just dumped 60% of his position in Apple Music, and Apple was his largest holding in his thing? I mean, there's going to be a parabolic shift in all of this stuff, and for people who don't see it coming, that's fine, but what I want to make sure is that we have the tools and access to the tools and the technology which already exists to deal with and solve for some of these complex issues that are coming our way.
Amazing. I love it. Artistintelligencelabs.com. Check it out. Okay, a couple more questions here as we wind down. Anyone watching on the live stream, it's your chance if you have any questions before we wrap up. So I'm just curious, looking at this now, we've talked through both gaming and kind of the music space in Web3. How much is there kind of an overlap between the two? And how do you see, because I think something like a Song Secure and some of these projects you're working on probably have application in both kind of gaming and music, right? So how much do you see kind of the overlap happening, and is it kind of a natural partnership? Do you think that there will be platforms that kind of embrace the Web3 music angle specifically for gaming, like for use in games and things like that?
So far it's been non-existent. I want to work with a lot of these companies, and a lot of these companies have some inherent challenges. So like Universe, for example, I would love to create the channel, and we already built this sort of framework that would do this, that would allow the game developers that are in that world to select music from people who opted in and use it in their games. But there is this inherent issue in that all of the assets that are deployed in the game are owned by the community. So what do you do with music in a world like that, where you can't license in something to where everyone takes ownership of everything that comes into that world? So they have an inherent challenge, and so do we. And there'll be, and there'll be, not to say that the mechanisms within those ecosystems won't exist, right? Where you'll be able to take something like a Song Secure framework and go to your user base and say, hey, if you want to submit your music for use in this world and or submit songs to be owned by the community and used in this world or whatever, you can, and they can even track the use, and in some ecosystems maybe reward you with protons or coins or whatever the economy runs on in that gaming ecosystem. So I think those internal frameworks are there, but I think we're all still navigating some of the complexities of how do you tap that for the average music creator who's not really coming to Web3 to give up all their rights.
Yeah, so that's what I was
to
curious
build up
about.
a catalog.
I don't want to lose that piece because it doesn't sound like that needs to be the case. Like, is it for Unioverse, for example? I know the whole case is the idea of like for the community, by the community, open license, definitely along all the creatives, right? But when you look at the actual game itself and the actual build that goes into it, I don't think every single element of the game is completely open license and available for taking, right? And
I'll share something with you.
Yeah.
I'll share something with you. All the music in the game, they bought, and it's owned by the community.
Wow.
They buy it from the composers, and it's owned by the community.
And it needs to be that way, and so that creates
I don't know if that's how they're going to do it going forward. I know that's how we did it for the first year.
Okay. Yeah, that just sounds overly onerous because, like, for one, it extremely limits the amount of or the kind of music that you can get, right? Because only certain types of, I think, music creators will be okay with that, right?
Yeah. In reality, here's the thing. In reality, I think that their bigger challenge is to make the game super compelling.
Right.
And we're so close to literally being able to have an Apple Music or a Spotify plug into your Twitch feed. I mean, the technology exists to deal with the license and the clearance and all of that stuff. It's just about whether these companies can actually play nice together to get this stuff resolved.
Right.
But either they'll play nice together and let this technology do what it does and get it resolved so creators and game players and everybody can. So in that world, then everybody's musical experience in their game is curated by themselves. Or maybe it comes from their existing playlist that they already have aggregated. I think that from a game dev side, what these guys from both Cosmic Foundry and from Random Games, the thing that I've appreciated is that it's, as you can see, it's easy to get bogged down in minutia of these details of how mechanisms work and lose sight of your goal, right? And their goal is to build next level really high quality games and assets for other developers to build games with. And so they're focused and they're delivering on that. I think because they're an ecosystem, especially Universe, because it's an ecosystem where it also lends itself to other developers building their own games with these assets.
Right.
I think that you also wind up having other developers who figure out other creative ways. Maybe they've got a buddy and they just want them to do the whole soundtrack for their game. Or maybe you work out a way where you play your music from an outside source.
Yeah, that's what it's like when you take the asset that you've purchased or that is open source and used it in a new project, it doesn't mean every element of your new project also has to be open source, right? So it just seems like there should be a solution there where you can actually have, certain types of music that is compensated for and bought and not open source and not, CCO or whatever, right?
And frankly, on a traditional, let's say on a Web3 game, on my audio dashboard, I should be able to have multiple audio sources, one being the internal narrative or voice from the game. And I should be able to have one that's music, whether I want to have that from whatever my music player is. It's not like anybody else hears it.
Yeah.
I'm hearing it in my earphone.
Yeah, exactly.
I should be able to set those. So if I want my music real low and I want the guy in my ear to be volume up, or if I want the guy to be down low and I want to hear the music more because I don't really care about what the guy's saying because I know what I'm doing in this game, then I should have the freedom to do that. And I think that when we push beyond the minutia of sort of where we are today in the ecosystem and we look at the freedom that these things are going to bring for game developers, I think we're going to see a lot of niche tools and solutions that'll come out in one game and then wind up being adopted across multiple games.
No doubt, no doubt. Well, that's what we're here for, and I think Unioverse is definitely a trendsetter in that space. And there are some other Web3 games also pushing forward, but the way that Unioverse, like you said, is really trying to do something so open source and so community based is definitely pretty fascinating. And I know they just had a recent release of their latest hero, so shout out to the Unioverse continuing
and
to
the Hoverdome, man,
forward.
with the hovercraft,
Yeah, you got the hovercraft.
And they have a
cool
Hoverdome contest, which was awesome. I watched some of that. It's and again, like, look, I was one of the original founding team and an advisor for the first year, and I really like those guys. But more importantly, I really like the project and how they've been intentionally building. And from the first time that we had talked about this, long before they launched, man, they are true to their word, really pushing.
Amazing. One of the real ones, not out to rug pull.
Yeah.
They're really doing it for the right reasons, clear intention, very transparent, very accountable, and their Discord is always popping. There's always people asking questions and giving feedback and things like that, so it's definitely cool. So yeah, shout out to Unioverse. So what's around the corner for Hakim? What are you looking forward to? What are you kind of most excited about heading into 2025? It sounds like you've got a lot on your plate.
Yeah, we're now with Link Media, we were consulting and advising a lot of projects the last few years, and we took on big projects in the hospitality world that were pretty compelling. And so now that we're done with that, we're launching. We've recently launched distribution inside the Artist Intelligence Labs ecosystem. We're bringing our speaking series back, where we go out and we speak to colleges and students and whoever wants to book us to have us come speak. David Lotwin and myself.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, really, that's about it right now. We're incubating a few new projects. We'll see where they go. And we're, managing and advising musical talent still in some legacy estates and some new talent. And we got a few projects that we'll be dropping some new music on later this year and early next year that should be really fun.
Awesome. Any IRL events that you're looking to do, maybe at Art Basel or NFT NYC? Because David Lotwin's pretty connected in NYC, right? You got that history in the hip-hop community there, and it would be awesome to be able to attend anything. I'm sure you guys could do a cool satellite event with NFT NYC or something. Any plans around that?
Not really around NFT NYC. No, we're really trying to build it up. The stuff we're going to do is much more micro conference festival type stuff. Just very focused, half day, one day, bring in a lot of our friends who are artists that people would recognize. Some of them will tell stories. We have DJs that will be doing DJ sets. We want to sort of, I like all the focus and all the let's talk about NFTs and Dream and all of that stuff. But I also think that right now we need to be facilitating more networking where people can have deeper dialogue about how we actually execute some of these things. I've spent since 2016 in the blockchain space, and certainly I've seen my fair share of projects come and go. And I've been pretty lucky in having a pretty good run of success in the projects that we were associated with and some of the things that we were doing. So I would like to see some of more projects like that get launched. I'd like to figure out how we get in contact with more developers, more people who are building in the music tech space specifically in this world, and how we collaborate more on solutions and support one another. There's a lot of fractioning in all these segments and a lot of competition, and I think that's fine to some extent. But at the same time, I think that we're a collective that, frankly, could afford to support one another. And it's not like Microsoft supporting Google here.
Right, exactly.
We're all trying to free ourselves from all of that stuff, and I've said it for a long time, but let's be real intentional that we're not bringing old habits into this new space.
Exactly, exactly. We like to say, Web3 is about abundance over scarcity and collaboration over competition. These are two paradigm shifts that I think Web3 is making more possible and really empowering us to do things differently and really shake things up for the industries. And all the disruption you just mentioned in the music industry is so exciting, and even in the gaming industry to a lesser extent as well. Yeah, I think there's a lot going on, and I appreciate all of the insights, Hakim. It's been a really amazing chat. Do you have any other final words before we wrap up here?
No, man, that's it. I appreciate you
Awesome,
having
man.
me. Thanks everybody for watching. And yeah, man, Artist Intelligence Labs, Link Media Partners. I'm pretty easy to reach.
There we
I'm
go.
out
Check
there.
it out. Keem Beats online. Thank you so much, Hakim.
Yeah.
Until next time, we'll catch you all in the metaverse.